got the air on, but I will mute it in a little bit. So this was the people profiles. I love this channel. This is King Tut, or Tutankhamun, the boy Pharaoh documentary. It'll either be 3 or 4 videos. Depends on kind of where I pause the first one, and all that fun stuff. Oh my goodness. Sorry, just been busy. So there's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. You can request videos. It just takes a little bit longer. If you request a video after you've donated, it moves to the top of the list. I'm speaking here, Alexa. If you don't mind, shut your face. Subscribe if you want me to yell at Alexa more. And if you don't want to do any of that, then just simply click the thumbs up button. That helps me. So let's get into the video.
The man known to history as Tutankhamun was born in the middle of the 14th century BC during the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt. Although we cannot be sure of his exact date or even year of birth, it is generally agreed that it occurred sometime in the late 1340s BC. Tutankhamun's parentage is disputed, though his father was most probably Akhenaten, who ruled Egypt as Amenhotep IV before he established a monotheistic religion known as Atenism, focused on the worship of the sun disk Aten. Beginning about 5 years before Tutankhamun was born, around the same time he changed his name to Akhenaten. Akhenaten had at least 6 daughters with his great royal wife, Queen Nefertiti. It is possible that she was also Tutankhamun's mother. Alternatively, his mother may have been a wife of Akhenaten's, known only as the Younger Lady. At the time of his birth, Tutankhamun was given the name Tutankhaten, or the living image of Aten, in honor of the sun god. Despite being one of the best-known pharaohs or kings of ancient Egypt, as a result of the discovery of his tomb and famous death mask by Howard Carter in 1922, details of Tutankhamun's short life and reign are still being pieced together by archaeologists and Egyptologists, using artifacts from his tomb and other evidence. He is likely to have been born in Amarna, the modern-day name of Akhetaten, the short-lived capital city founded by his father on the eastern bank of the River Nile, around 200 miles to the south of Egypt's modern-day capital of Cairo. The young Egyptian prince was born with a club foot on his left leg, forcing him to use a walking stick throughout his life. He was brought up by his wet nurse, a woman named Maya from his father's harem. Among the artifacts found in Tutankhamun's tomb are toys he owned and played with as a child, including an ivory monkey with moving arms and a small wooden bird. At around the age of 4, he learned how to write, starting with the cursive hieratic script used on a daily basis before moving on to the formal and sacred hieroglyphs found on ancient Egyptian monuments. Tutankhaten learned to write by copying out ancient texts, which also offered political wisdom for kings and princes preparing for kingship. He would also have studied administration, geography, history, diplomacy, and religion, as well as the theory and practice of warfare, which included chariot riding and archery. Tutankhaten grew up during a revolutionary period in Egyptian history, driven by his father's religious changes. The traditional Egyptian polytheistic belief system involved the worship of many different gods, amongst whom the creator god Amun and the sun god Ra were most prominent. However, Akhenaten had introduced the cult of Aten.
Side note, I'm a Detroit Lions fan. We have a wide receiver going into his 4th year, and his name is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and everyone calls him the sun god. That's his nickname. He's a really great player too. But yeah, it's just funny when Amun and then Ra. It was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Just a little side note.
A sun god depicted as a golden disk with rays of light radiating downwards in a fan. While Akhenaten allowed his subjects to continue worshipping the traditional gods, only stipulating that Aten was the supreme god. By the 9th year of his reign, a few years before Tutankhamun's birth, Aten was increasingly portrayed as the preeminent deity. Under the new religion, the Aten was regarded as the creator of the world and everything within it, and each morning at sunrise, the king would make offerings to the Aten at the temples he built in his capital. Akhenaten identified as the son of Aten and served as the chief priest of his cult, and it is possible that Tutankhamun received his religious instruction directly from his father. During his travels with his tutors across the country, the prince may have seen the names of the old gods being removed from the monuments, even while many people continue to worship them. The boy may also have noticed the different artistic styles in the old temples and the new civic buildings rising up from the desert around him in Akhenaten. Around the 14th year of Akhenaten's reign, when Tutankhamun was around 6 years old, the latter's sister or half-sister, Princess Meketaten, died at the age of 10. While her cause of death remains unknown, a plague had been spreading throughout the eastern Mediterranean world. In any case, an infectious disease is a likely explanation, as Neketaten's youngest sisters, Nefer-Nefer-Yer and Setepenra, also died around this time. Older female members of the family followed, including Tutankhamun's grandmother, Queen Tia, and Akhenaten's secondary wife, Queen Kia. Following these deaths in the royal family, Akhenaten hoped to secure his succession and the continuation of his religious reforms by naming a man named Smenkhare, possibly a relative of his, as his co-regent. This Smenkhare was responsible for the construction of a great hall in Akhenaten's royal palace and was expected to be Akhenaten's successor, but died after a year or two. Akhenaten died around the same time, in what was possibly the 17th year of his reign, and around 1336 BC. Following Akhenaten's death, the throne possibly passed to Smenkhare for a brief time before his death, and then appears to have passed to a king named Nefer-Nefer-Uaten, who may have ruled as co-regent alongside Tutankhamun. The new king is believed to have been a royal woman and may have been the eldest daughter of Meritaten, or more likely his great wife Nefertiti. King Nefer-Nefer-Uaten continued to develop the cult of Aten, but was prepared to reintroduce the cult of Amun and the other gods in order to appease the followers of the traditional faith. She abandoned her plans to build a tomb at Akhenaten and instead ordered craftsmen to build a tomb and mortuary temple in the Valley of Kings near Thebes, modern-day Luxor, the traditional capital and royal burial ground for the kings of Egypt in the 2nd millennium BC. The Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass theorized that Nefer-Nefer-Uaten also moved her capital to Thebes, but Shaw suggests that she remained in Akhetaten, in the palace she shared with her late husband. However, she would only live another 2 years, leaving the throne to the 10-year-old Tutankhamun. By the time he ascended to the throne, the 10-year-old King Tutankhamun was still a child receiving his education and could not be expected to exercise royal power by himself. He was therefore advised by courtiers and officials much older than him, who had served his father Akhenaten. His most influential advisor was Ai, a relative who may have been the brother of his grandmother, Queen Tai. While a man...
Put yourself in his situation. You're 10 years old, and now you're in power. There is not a single chance on this planet that at 10 years old I would have been good with power. I'm going out on a limb. I would like to say I would have been good. I'd be good with it now because I have an appreciation for it. I'm older. Then, no. Do you know how many people would have been put to death if they didn't bring me a nice jar of like Skittles. I would have been terrible. I'm a terrible king.
Named Maya controlled the treasury. As for military matters, the young king relied on the advice of General Horemheb, commander of the Egyptian army. Although these men had dutifully promoted Artanism during the previous reigns, the calamities of recent years, including the plague and the deaths of royal family members in quick succession, were interpreted as a sign of divine punishment for neglecting the worship of the old gods. With Akhenaten and Nefertiti gone, Tutankhamun's courtiers now had the opportunity to educate the new pharaoh in the old religion and persuade him to return to the old ways and restore divine favor to the realm. Although the king's advisors wielded considerable power and influence, Tutankhamun would have been required to perform ceremonial tasks and to announce important decisions in person, even as a child ruler. As with all Egyptian pharaohs, he had important religious duties as chief priest of the state religion. As part of the coronation ceremony that marked his assumption of royal authority, the young king was transformed from a human being into a living god. The rituals were conducted according to the old traditions, with offerings made to Amun, his wife the mother goddess Mut, and their son Khonsu, god of the moon. Priests and priestesses represented gods and goddesses who placed various crowns upon the king's head, including the red crown of Lower Egypt, the white crown of Upper Egypt, and the blue crown worn by 18th dynasty pharaohs or kings during war and religious ceremonies. The king was then given his crook and flail, symbols of royal power in Egypt. According to Egyptian royal tradition, the pharaoh would have chosen 4 extra names to reflect his personal qualities and regal majesty. Of these 4 royal names, only one is known. His throne name, Nebkheperure, meaning Lord of Manifestations, is Ra. While Tutankhamun still used his birth name when he assumed the throne, not long afterward the Aten in the king's name was replaced with Amun. Thus Tutankhamun became Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun. King Tutankhamun would have been crowned alongside his wife and half-sister Ankhesenamun, one of the daughters of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. The marriage of siblings in this way was commonplace amongst the royals of ancient Egypt. She was a year older than Tutankhamun, and the two had already been married when the latter became king. Ankhesenamun appears to have been his only queen. The 18th dynasty was known for its powerful queens, and Ankhesenamun would have learned about the deeds of her illustrious ancestor Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who reigned a century and a half earlier and built a grand mortuary temple in the Theban necropolis near the Valley of the Kings. She had also just seen her mother, Nefertiti, rule Egypt as King Nefer-Neferuaten. Accordingly, Ankhesenamun was present alongside Tutankhamun throughout his reign for royal ceremonies and audiences, and corresponded with foreign rulers in her own name. Her most important duties included serving as the manifestation of the Egyptian goddesses during religious ceremonies. Of course, as in almost all other monarchies, the queen's main task was to continue the dynastic lineage by bearing the king's children. Ankhesenamun was pregnant twice, but on both occasions her daughters were stillborn. Early in his reign, Tutankhamun's advisors persuaded him to move his capital away from Akhetaten, with power being returned to the cities of Memphis in northern Egypt near the Nile Delta and Thebes in the south. Memphis had been the capital of the Old Kingdom of Egypt in the 3rd millennium BC, when the Great Pyramids and Sphinx were built on the Giza Plateau near the city. Thereafter, Thebes had become the capital. Following the establishment of the 18th dynasty in the mid-16th century BC, Memphis regained its importance as a political center. While Akhenaten built a temple of Aten in the city, from Memphis and Thebes, Tutankhamun and his advisors embarked on the complete reversal of Akhenaten's religious reforms. The king issued a royal decree, which stated that during the previous reigns the old gods had been neglected and withdrawn their divine protection. As a result, Egypt was in chaos and its armies had been defeated on the battlefield. The text
What was that rock formation? I saw it was blocked off, so you probably, I mean, for safety, clearly you're not going to go to it. I'd go up and karate chop it, and the whole thing would fall apart. That wouldn't happen. It'd fall on me. I'd kill me. What was that? So what was that? If anyone knows, that would have been pretty cool to know.
Adds that after Tutankhamun came to the throne and moved his court to Memphis, the old gods were venerated once again and prosperity was restored to the land. The proclamation was inscribed into stone stele in prominent locations around the country, such as the Temple of Karnak in Thebes. Although the text of these restoration stele claimed that all was well once again, in reality the process of restoration was just beginning. Tutankhamun had been brought up at his father's court in Amarna, surrounded by depictions of Aten on palace walls, and witnessed his father taking part in the elaborate rituals of worshipping the sun disk every morning. To issue a proclamation discrediting the belief system he grew up with must have been a difficult experience for the young king. The king's closest advisors, Maya, and Horemheb, had risen to positions of influence during the reign of Akhenaten, and had tombs made for them in Amarna with Artenist inscriptions.
That's actually real footage from the time. A lot of people don't know that.
But they formed the vanguard of the move back to tradition. Is believed to have been the power behind the throne. By the end of Tutankhamun's reign, he may have assumed the office of Grand Vizier. Treasury Chief Maya was also responsible for royal construction projects, and it was he who began the work of restoring the temples to the old gods. While Akhenaten had ordered the destruction of images of the old gods, in particular Amun, Tutankhamun ordered his chief sculptor, Usharhadhatiye, to repair the images or to make new ones from scratch. Meanwhile, Horemheb personally appointed men to fill the priesthoods that had been left vacant during Akhenaten's reign. Interestingly, though the temples of Aten in Amarna were closed, the temple of Aten in Memphis remained open.
So he's not doing this because he wants to. He's doing it because the advisors want him to get back to the older way. And he's 10 years old, so he's easily going to go along. Okay, fine. That's okay. If that's what you want. So I understand why the advisors are there. But with how young he is, man, they could get him to do a lot. They could get him to do something bad and then use that against him to overthrow. I don't know what all happens to him. I know the name. I know very little about him, but...
Around 2 or 3 years into Tutankhamun's reign, with the revival of the old religion very much underway, the former capital of Akhetaten was being abandoned by its inhabitants, taking the bodies of their relatives with them. King Tutankhamun followed suit and decided to exhume the tombs in the royal cemetery to the east of Amarna and transfer their contents to the Valley of the Kings, which had served as the royal necropolis for the pharaohs and their family members from the reign of Thutmose I at the beginning of the 15th century BC until Akhenaten's move to Amarna. Tutankhamun ordered an...
I'm going to go back just about 5 seconds. We're going to go ahead and end it there. I'm just going to do them under 15 minutes. It's about 7 p.m. and I got to get a few things done, and I can't stop sneezing right now. I feel another one coming. Okay, so this is going to have to be a 4-parter. I do apologize, but I'm just tired. So I'm going to end this here, and until tomorrow, which would be part 2, have a good day, have a good night.